My name is Rachel Demir. I am 39 years old. And the first thing I heard when I woke up in a hospital bed on a Friday morning was a nurse whispering 4 words directly into my ear. Don't sign anything yet. Then she straightened up. She adjusted my IV line. She smiled at the door as if she had said nothing at all. My husband, Daniel, was standing in the doorway. He was holding flowers, yellow tulips, my favorite. He was wearing the blue shirt I had bought him for his birthday. He looked like every version of concerned and loving that a husband is supposed to. I had been married to Daniel for 9 years, and something about the way he was standing in that doorway made every instinct I had go completely silent and still. A nurse I had never met had just whispered 4 words into my ear before he could reach me. I looked at the flowers. I said, "Daniel, what happened to me?" He said, "Sweetheart, you fell. You hit your head. You've been here since Wednesday." Wednesday? It was Friday. 2 days. I said, "What did I fall from?" He said, "The stairs at home. You don't remember?" I said, "No." He said, "The doctors say that's normal. Short-term memory loss from the impact. It'll come back." He crossed the room. He kissed my forehead. He put the tulips on the bedside table. And then he said, "There's just some paperwork the hospital needs. Insurance forms. I have them here if you feel up to it." I looked at the forms in his hand. I looked at the tulips. I said, "I'm very tired. Can it wait until tomorrow?" He said, Of course I can." He sat down in the chair beside my bed. He held my hand, and I lay there with my eyes half closed, and I thought about 4 words. Don't sign anything yet. Let me tell you who I am before I tell you what was in those forms. I am a property lawyer. I have been one for 14 years. I have spent 14 years reading documents that people sign without fully understanding. I have spent 14 years watching people lose things because they trusted the wrong person at the wrong moment. I know what a signature means. I know what it costs when you give one away carelessly. Daniel knew this too. He had watched me work for 9 years. He had heard me say it at dinner tables and to friends who called for advice. Never sign something you haven't read. Never sign something you don't understand. Never sign something when someone is rushing you. He knew I would not sign anything without reading it first, which meant the forms he was holding were something he believed I would sign without reading, because I had just woken up with 2 days missing from my memory, because he thought I was confused, because the timing was not an accident. I kept my eyes half closed, I kept my breathing steady, and I waited for Daniel to leave the room. He left at 6:47 p.m. to get coffee from the machine down the hall. I know the exact time because I watched the clock above the door from the moment he sat down. The moment he was gone, the nurse appeared. She moved quickly. She closed the door most of the way. She pulled the chair close to my bed and sat down and spoke quietly and fast. Her name was Patricia Osei. She had been a nurse for 22 years. She had a photograph of her 3 children on her ID badge lanyard, a detail I noticed because I notice details. She said, "I have 6 minutes before he comes back, so I am going to talk and you are going to listen." I said, "Go ahead." She said, "Your husband has been here since Wednesday night. The first night you were unconscious, he asked 3 times when you would be well enough to sign documents. Not when you would be well enough to go home, when you would be well enough to sign." I said nothing. She said, "On Thursday morning he brought a man with him, introduced him as a family friend. The man waited in the corridor for 2 hours. Your husband came out and spoke to him twice. The second time he handed him a folder of papers." I said, "Did you see what was in the folder?" She said, "No, but I saw the letterhead on the top page when the folder was open. It was a property transfer document. I have seen enough of them in this hospital to know what they look like."
property transfer. I am a property lawyer. I know exactly what a property transfer document does. It transfers ownership of property from one person to another. I said, Patricia, what is my husband's name on your system? She said, Daniel Demir. I said, and the property in his name currently? She checked her tablet. She said, according to your admissions forms, he listed your home address, a property at 14 Keswick Lane. 14 Keswick Lane.
I said nothing. She said, on Thursday morning he brought a man with him, introduced him as a family friend. The man waited in the corridor for 2 hours. Your husband came out and spoke to him twice. The second time, he handed him a folder of papers. I said, did you see what was in the folder? She said no, but I saw the letterhead on the top page when the folder was open. It was a property transfer document. I have seen enough of them in this hospital to know what they look like. Property transfer. I am a property lawyer. I know exactly what a property transfer document does. It transfers ownership of property from one person to another. I said, Patricia, what is my husband's name on your system? She said, Daniel Demir. I said, and the property in his name currently? She checked her tablet. She said, according to your admission forms, he listed your home address, a property at 14 Keswick Lane.
I said nothing. She said, on Thursday morning he brought a man with him, introduced him as a family friend. The man waited in the corridor for 2 hours. Your husband came out and spoke to him twice. The second time he handed him a folder of papers. I said, did you see what was in the folder? She said, no, but I saw the letterhead on the top page when the folder was open. It was a property transfer document. I have seen enough of them in this hospital to know what they look like. Property transfer. I am a property lawyer. I know exactly what a property transfer document does. It transfers ownership of property from one person to another. I said, Patricia, what is my husband's name on your system? She said, Daniel Demir. I said, and the property in his name currently? She checked her tablet. She said, according to your admission forms, he listed your home address, a property at 14 Keswick Lane.
14 Keswick Lane. The house I had inherited from my father. The house that was registered solely in my name, that had been in my name for 11 years, that Daniel had no legal claim to whatsoever, unless I signed a transfer document. I said, Patricia, I need 2 things. She said, tell me. I said, I need my phone, and I need you to tell me where the nurse's station computer is and whether I can access property registry records from it. She looked at me for 2 seconds. Then she reached into her uniform pocket and produced my phone. She said, it was in your belongings bag. I charged it last night. I wasn't sure why I did. I think I was sure you'd need it. She put it in my hand. She said, the nurse's station is at the end of the hall. I have full system access. Tell me what you need to search. I said, search for any property transfer applications filed in the last 72 hours involving 14 Keswick Lane. She turned to her tablet. Her face changed. She said, there is an application, filed yesterday morning, pending final authorization. She said, the receiving party is a company, registered 3 months ago. The director listed is... She looked at me. She said, it's not your husband's name. I said, what name is it? She told me.
I knew the name. I need to tell you about the name. Sandra Cole. I had known Sandra Cole for 6 years. She was Daniel's business partner. They ran a small property development consultancy together. I had met her at Christmas dinners and summer barbecues. I had bought her a birthday present twice. I had believed she was a colleague. I looked at my phone.
I opened my email. My inbox had 47 unread messages from the past 2 days. I scrolled fast, past the work emails, past the newsletters, past the automatic alerts. Then I stopped. An alert from my bank, sent Wednesday at 11:23 p.m., 4 hours after I was admitted to the hospital. A login to my joint account from a device I did not recognize. Wednesday, 11:23 p.m., while I was unconscious. I opened my banking app. I looked at the transaction history. Wednesday, 11:31 p.m., a transfer, $43,000 to an account I did not recognize. Thursday, 9:14 a.m., another transfer, $28,000 to a different account. $71,000 while I was in a hospital bed with 2 days missing from my memory. I put the phone down on the blanket. I looked at the ceiling for exactly 4 seconds. Then I picked the phone back up. I called Grace Okafor, my attorney, the one I called when the situation was real. She answered on the second ring. I said, "Grace, I am in St. Anne's Hospital. I have been here since Wednesday. While I was unconscious, my husband filed a property transfer application on my inherited home to a company controlled by his business partner. He also accessed our joint account and transferred $71,000 in 2 transactions. Grace said, "Are you safe right now?" I said, "My husband is down the hall getting coffee. He will be back in approximately 4 minutes." Grace said, "Listen carefully. Do not sign anything he gives you. Do not tell him you know. I am filing an emergency injunction on the property transfer right now. It will be in the system within 30 minutes. And Rachel, I need you to do one more thing." I said, "Tell me." She said, "When he comes back, be normal. Be confused. Be the woman who just woke up and doesn't remember. Can you do that?" I said, "Grace, I am a property lawyer. I have been doing this for 14 years. She said, "Right. Call me when he leaves tonight." I hung up. I put the phone under my pillow. I closed my eyes. 30 seconds later, Daniel walked back in with 2 coffees. He said, "I got you one in case you wanted it." I said, "Thank you. That's so thoughtful." I smiled at him. He smiled back. And for the next 4 hours, I was the most convincing, confused, and grateful wife he had ever seen. I want to pause here, because lying in that hospital bed, pretending not to know what I knew, is the hardest thing I have ever done, professionally and personally at the same time. If you have ever had to pretend everything was fine while everything was falling apart, drop a comment below. I want to hear it. And subscribe right now, because what Grace filed that night and what Daniel found out the next morning is the part that changed everything. Grace's injunction landed in the property registry system at 7:23 p.m. The transfer application for 14 Keswick Lane was frozen. At 8:15 p.m., Daniel received a notification on his phone. I watched his face from the bed. I watched him read it. I watched something shift behind his eyes. He said, "I have to make a quick call. I'll be right back." He stepped into the corridor. I counted to 15. Then I texted Patricia. She was at the nurse's station. She had a clear sight line to the corridor where Daniel was standing. She texted back in 40 seconds. "He is on the phone. He looks angry. The man from yesterday is here. They are speaking quietly." I said, "Can you photograph them together without being obvious?" She said, "I am a nurse. I have been navigating difficult situations discreetly for 22 years. 30 seconds later, a photograph arrived on my phone. Daniel and the man from Thursday, standing close together in the corridor. The man was holding a phone to his ear. Daniel had his hand on the man's arm. I forwarded it to Grace immediately. Daniel came back to the room at 8:34 p.m. He was composed.
He was good at composed. 9 years of marriage had taught me that Daniel was very good at composed. He said, "I have to go home and deal with something. I'll be back in the morning. You rest." He kissed my forehead. He took the unsigned forms from the bedside table. He left. I listened to his footsteps until I could not hear them anymore. Then I sat up. I said, "Patricia." She appeared in the doorway within seconds. I said, "I need a pen and paper." She brought them. I wrote down everything, every detail, every timestamp, every account number, the name Sandra Cole, the photograph, Grace's injunction, Patricia's observations from Wednesday and Thursday, everything in order with times and dates, the way I had learned to document things in 14 years of property law. 4 pages, 63 minutes. I handed them to Patricia. I said, "If anything happens to me before morning, these pages go to Grace Okafor. Her number is at the top." Patricia folded the pages carefully. She put them in her uniform pocket. She said, "Nothing is going to happen to you." She said it with the specific certainty of a woman who has been doing difficult things for 22 years and has decided this is one of them. I believed her. Grace moved fast. By 9 p.m., she had frozen the 2 bank accounts the transfers had gone to, both registered to shell companies, both connected through a chain of 3 intermediary accounts to Sandra Cole's personal account. By 11 p.m., she had filed a police report for fraud and financial abuse. By 7 a.m. the next morning, 2 detectives were at the hospital to take my statement. Daniel arrived at 8:15 a.m. with the unsigned forms and a coffee and his blue shirt.
He walked into my room. He saw the 2 detectives. He stopped. He looked at me. I said, "Daniel, I think you should call a lawyer." He said, "Rachel." I said, "Not me, a different lawyer, one who works for you." Here is what happened in the 6 months after that Saturday morning. Daniel was arrested on charges of fraud, financial abuse, and attempted property theft. He was released on bail. His attorney negotiated for 3 months. In month 4, he pleaded guilty to 2 of the 3 charges. He is serving 3 years. Sandra Cole was charged separately. Her company was dissolved. The $71,000 was recovered in full. Every dollar returned to my account within 60 days of the police report. The property transfer application for 14 Keswick Lane was formally rejected by the registry office. The injunction Grace filed at 7:23 p.m. on a Friday night held. The house is still mine. My father built that house. He worked for 31 years, and he left it to me specifically because he wanted me to have something that was only mine, something no one could take. Almost no one. Patricia Osei, 22 years as a nurse, 3 children on her ID badge lanyard, 6 minutes while Daniel was getting coffee. She noticed something was wrong on Wednesday night. She did not know what. She just knew that a husband who asks 3 times when his unconscious wife can sign documents is not asking the right questions. She kept watching. She held my phone. She took the photograph. She put 4 pages in her uniform pocket and said, "Nothing is going to happen to you." On the day I was discharged, I brought her flowers, yellow tulips, the same ones Daniel had brought. I chose them deliberately. She laughed when she saw them, the real kind, the kind that fills a corridor. She said, "You didn't have to." I said, "I know. That's why I did." The object that started everything was a set of unsigned forms. Daniel brought them Friday morning. He brought them Saturday morning, too. Both times I sent him away. Both times he left with them. They are in evidence now. Exhibit 7 in the case file. Property transfer document. 14 Keswick Lane. My signature line at the bottom, blank. Because a nurse I had never met leaned over my bed and whispered 4 words before he could reach me, and because 14 years of property law had taught me exactly what those 4 words meant.
Here is what waking up in a hospital bed taught me. The people who protect you are not always the people you expect. Sometimes they are the person who charges your phone because they have a feeling, who takes a photograph in a corridor because you asked, who folds 4 pages of notes and says, "Nothing is going to happen to you," with the certainty of someone who has decided to make it true. Patricia Osei did not know me. She just knew something was wrong. That was enough. Pay attention to the people who notice, the ones who lean in when everyone else is standing back, the ones who whisper before the room fills up. They are the ones who matter most when it counts. Drop a comment and tell me your story. I read every single one. And subscribe. I am here every week with a new story. Same ending every time. She stayed calm, she stayed quiet, then she won.